When the offseason started, if you told me the Jazz were signing Patty Mills, Svi Mykhailuk, and Drew Eubanks, no chance I would have guessed that. So why'd they do it? Next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Today on Locked on Jazz, we are going to look at the signings of Svi Mykhailuk, Patty Mills, Drew Eubanks, and how they all make sense, and why did the Jazz do it? And those are not the three people I would have ever anticipated the Jazz signing in this offseason, but it's really all about the seven, and that's what this is about. We'll discuss it coming up here on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. We are available on YouTube. Thanks so much for jumping aboard, and thank you to all the everydayers out there that join us. If you want Utah Jazz, you click here. We talk Utah Jazz each and every day for you. 3 days a week right now. All right. Today's show, by the way, is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an app account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app. What time is it? It's game time. Getting close. It's almost prep time. I start digging in. We're going to try to do a team a day. See if I can get it done and be ready for this season, as ready as we've ever been. I have a broadcast meeting today, so we're all there. All right. I'll be honest. I don't know who I thought we were signing. I talked a lot about Isaac Okoro, who's still unsigned. There weren't a lot of players when we went through the free agency together, and if you're an everydayer, you were there, and we walked through it. It wasn't a robust group. But when you look at the signings of Svi Mykhailuk, Drew Eubanks, and Patty Mills, all of them fit the same idea and concept and mold, except for maybe one minor exception. And so let's look at it. I'm going to start with Patty Mills because honestly, Patty Mills is probably the one that's gotten the most reaction, at least to me, and maybe makes the least sense. Why would you possibly sign a 36-year-old guard who played a grand total of 20 or 33 games last year, 32 games last year, 40 the year before, and really, for all intents and purposes, in his time in Brooklyn and his time, particularly last year in Atlanta and Miami, looked a little cooked. So let me start with the first premise for you. There's a myth of the NBA. And the myth is that veteran leadership is to the benefit of teams, not players. And what I mean by this is, we got to have our veteran leadership. I think veteran leadership is generally a crock. Because what I've seen in this league is that by the time most players are veterans, they've been traded 2 or 3 times. They've maybe been mistreated by an organization at some point in time. And the message they're going to give your young player is not in the benefit of the organization that player plays for. It's going to be, you get yours. You do you. You make sure you take care of yourself. You make sure you're healthy. You make sure you get paid. That's what the veteran leadership message is going to be to most players. I watched it. I'm not going to say who, but I literally watched veteran leadership take place for an entire year where a veteran leader went and literally told the younger player, hey, make sure you get yours. This is about you. They'll trade you. They'll cut you. They'll do whatever. You do what you want to do. You get what you need. You get your money. You go to your place. And that's what happened. And that's how it happens almost all the time. So let me address the first myth here, and that is that veteran leadership, I think, is a total crock. But Patty Mills is probably the exception to that rule. And that's why you signed Patty Mills. At 36 years old and maybe a little cooked, what is he? He's got veteran leadership. He also did spend 10 years with a franchise, of which he won championships, of which he was with Will Hardy. I happened to be just randomly with Will Hardy last year in Hawaii, and we started talking about Patty Mills out of nowhere. So Patty Mills is someone that Will Hardy trusts, believes in, has a relationship with, and can be the rare case of a veteran leader. When veteran leadership is maybe not as generally there as it is. So why do you sign a guy who shot 34% last year and 21% last year from three? Because he's going to bust Keontae's you-know-what every day in practice. Because he's going to bust Isaiah Collier's you-know-what every day in practice. And at the same time, he's going to teach them and lead them and explain to them and guide them. And he's played a little less than 900 NBA games. And he's played with the greatest players of all time. And he can tell a story, hold a room, conduct an individual meeting. And he has played 100 playoff games. So he's been to 4 NBA finals. So in a world where I don't believe in veteran leadership, Patty Mills is the veteran leader. He also can probably play enough, right? So you don't want someone coming in here who's trying to, frankly, beat out Keonte George at this point. Keontae's still got learning and warts and things like that he has to do. There's no value in having somebody out here who's going to try to beat out Keonte George. And the second one is, if Isaiah Collier's really ready to play 14, 15 minutes a night as a backup point guard, then we want to have that happen. Because the point here still comes back to the 7. And I don't know which of the 7 are the most important, but the 7 are Keonte George, they're Bryce Sensabaugh, they're Taylor Hendricks, they're Isaiah Collier, they're Cody Williams, they're Kyle Filipowski, and they're Walker Kessler. And the 7, we need to know what we have. And by signing all 3 of these guys, it's unlikely you impede the 7. The other one is if you go sign a 31-year-old backup point guard for a deal, you know what they want? They're not going to be a veteran leader. They want one more contract. They want to prove that they're out there going to be able to get another deal. Maybe a 29-year-old point guard. Patty Mills isn't there. Patty Mills knows what his role is for the rest of his career. If he wants to stay in the game, it's going to be coaching in front office and work like that. If he wants to keep playing, it's going to be leading veterans, not being difficult. But a 31-year-old guy is not going to be okay in the locker room if Isaiah Collier gets 15 or 18 minutes in front of him. Might not be all right if Keonte George does, but maybe that would be so obvious. So if you look at our point guard room right now, it's Keonte George, it's Isaiah Collier. I know we don't necessarily believe in point guard, so it's a little Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson, but it's Patty Mills. And in the rare case, I'll tell you, I think you got veteran leadership here, and this one makes sense for that. So how does Mykhailuk and Eubanks fit? One of them's a little different than the other, and we'll touch on that next as we continue on Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy. Located in Woods Cross and up in Logan, the Chevy trucks are something special. Chevy brings you the best made truck on the market. The Murdochs bring you 80 plus years of being in Utah and being a part of the community. So right now is the time if you're looking for that truck, getting ready for the winter winter, which is a little bit around the corner. Sorry, it's true. I know the weather's perfect right now, but it is around the. It's so gorgeous out. Nonetheless, if you're trying to get that truck, the Silverado 3500 HD or the 2500 HD, or even the Silverado EV, they're all out there, plus the Colorado as well. And the SUV lineups by Chevy are absolutely fabulous. From the Trax to the Traverse to the Blazer and the Trailblazer and the Utah County Assault vehicles, the Tahoe and the Suburban. If you're going to stop by Murdoch Chevy in Woods Cross or in Logan, please email me first. We'll give you the VIP treatment you deserve. And by the way, the 2024 Silverado 1500, $10,000 off right now on that truck. Pretty amazing. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time. Get into the action with Game Time. The best price, all the features you could possibly want from Game Time. What do I mean when I say all the features? Well, all in pricing. You toggle this feature, shows the top, and you have no surprises at checkout. It gives you seat view. It gives you the lowest price guarantee, which gives you 110% the difference. Gives you Game Time ticket coverage. Purchase is covered with flexible customer service policy, the best in the industry, and it gives you Game Time picks. Curation makes it easy to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem Locked On NBA for $20 off. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Download the Game Time app. What time is it? It's game time. It is the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. Thanks so much. For your second listen, Locked On NBA is still going every single day of the offseason. Daily basketball analysis for national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you informed or entertained. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It is Locked On NBA. All right, so let's go to Drew Eubanks because he might be a little bit different. For those who don't know Drew Eubanks, well, he is 6'9", 245. So he's a little undersized as a center. He went undrafted out of Oregon State. He grew up in Oregon, and then he made his career in San Antonio. Okay, so we have institutional cultural knowledge of who Drew Eubanks is, how he conducts himself, and what he is as a player. He also seems to be on an interesting, good trajectory of improvement. Okay? He played in his opening years with the Spurs, he played about 22 minutes, and then suddenly he played 50 minutes, and then 14 minutes, 50 games, excuse me. He played 22 games and 54 games, and then he suddenly played 71 games, and then in Portland, on a not very good team, he played 78 and 75. So he suddenly has become a bona fide NBA rotation player. And this is where I think things are a little different. I don't think Drew Eubanks signed a contract with the Utah Jazz with the intention of not getting the 15 to 20 minutes a night he got the last year. Frankly, the year before, he played 29 and a half minutes. And he's done some things pretty well. If you go to the top 100 pick and roll combinations last year in the NBA, the number one combination in the NBA was Dame Lillard and Bobby Portis. Number two was Trae Young and Jalen Johnson. Number three was Derek White and Kristaps Porzingis. Number four was Franz Wagner and Wendell Carter Jr. And these are 300 or more pick and rolls, so not the most high volume. Number five was Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren. That's worth remembering and watching how much they run it this year. And number six was Devin Booker and Drew Eubanks. So that's pretty interesting. Eubanks, so you wonder why. There's some interesting things about that grouping, right? If you look at that grouping, Portis can play pop. Jalen Johnson's really a wing, so that's kind of a small spall. Kristaps can play pop. Wendell Carter, I just think might be better. It's also a small sample size. Chet Holmgren can play both direct pop. Drew Eubanks is interesting here. By the way, the next three, just to give you the top 10, the number one in the NBA that actually ran a lot of pick and rolls together, the high volume, was Tyrese Halliburton and Miles Turner. Then it was Jason Tatum and Kristaps Porzingis, and then it was Jason Tatum and Al Horford. Pretty interesting that Jason Tatum's in there twice. And then Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. So on Eubanks, what gets interesting is he's not a three-point shooter. All of those guys that we just mentioned, almost all of them, pop and open up the floor for the driver, whereas Eubanks was doing something different with Devin Booker. He might have just been setting super solid picks to free the guard and get them off and get them going. And so you back up for a second and you say, okay, well, Patty Mills is here and knows how to run the pick and roll and do this. Has been probably run a few 10,000 pick and rolls in his NBA career. And he's here going to teach Isaiah Collier, and he's going to teach the Keonte George. Well, if you go to the pick and roll combinations last year, what I just did, the unfortunate thing is that the worst pick and roll combination in the NBA last year was Keonte George and John Collins. Of the 105 guys that ran 300 pick and rolls, they had the lowest by a fairly large margin pick and roll combination in the NBA. That's not that uncommon. It's a rookie guard, but that's not a combo that worked very well. Well, and Walker has to make huge strides in his pick and roll game. That's probably the biggest thing, is that Walker's got to make huge strides in his pick and roll game. Because he did not set picks. He's not a very good pick setter. He was better, noticeably better, in Summer League, to his credit. So while Patty Mills is here to be pure veteran leadership and to not step on any toes, I actually think Drew Eubanks is here to do exactly the opposite. I think he's here to step on toes. I think he's here for Walker Kessler to not walk into camp and be like, oh, I got my minutes. I think he's here that in case we trade John Collins, he actually plays a bunch of minutes. Right now, if we were to trade John Collins, you got to be able to play. All three of these guys can play. They're probably not going to impact your win-loss record a great deal, but all three of them allow you to stay viable if you were to move someone or have an injury. Right now, if Keonte goes down, we're Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson as our backcourt. If one of our big guys goes down, John Collins or Walker Kessler, I'm not sure Kyle Filipowski's ready for 22 minutes a night in a viable manner. If he is, that's great. But Drew Eubanks, Svi, and Patty give you that security because all of them can play enough. But in the case of Eubanks, I think this one's here to push Walker a little bit. I think it's also here that number with Devin Booker, and it would be interesting to go back and then look at a previous year to see whether or not, if we go back a previous year, we see anything similar in the year in which Eubanks played 22-23. Eubanks plays 20 minutes a night. Is he got some of those same characteristics where he was a helpful pick and roll guard with Dame Lillard? And the answer is absolutely. His pick and roll numbers with Dame Lillard are 1.16 points per pick and roll, second best in the NBA of the top 100 guys that year. Number one was Steph Curry and Draymond Green. Number two was Dame Lillard and Drew Eubanks. Number three was Luka with Tim Hardaway. Number four was Luka with Christian Wood. Number five was Jason Tatum with Robert Williams. Number six was Steph with Kevon Looney. And Dame with Yusuf Nurkic was number 9. So Dame's a lot of it. But for 2 years in a row, Drew Eubanks has been in the top 10 in pick and roll combinations. So you're signing Drew Eubanks because he actually might help your guards a great deal. You're also signing Drew Eubanks because he's going to push Walker Kessler a great deal. And you're also signing Drew Eubanks because the Keonte George, John Collins pick and roll clearly did not work a year ago. May not have a combination that works well. And you need to have something for Keonte George to be able to develop and find out what he can do. And if Keonte George should be able, if Drew Eubanks is in fact one of the best pick and roll set screeners and centers in the league, then guess what? Hopefully Keonte George is pretty good with him, because if he's not, it's a little disconcerting. So that's where I think Drew Eubanks is a little different. Well, there's no question that Patty Mills is leadership and what I think is the elusive veteran leadership. Drew Eubanks, to me, is here for the benefit of the guards and to push Walker. It still comes back to the same thing, the development of the 7. So then, how does a 27-year-old Ukrainian, who at one point in his career looked like he was going to be a deadly sharpshooter and then has bounced around with his shooting quality, and Svi Mykhailuk fit into this mix? Next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by the official sportsbook of Locked On. It's FanDuel. FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Right now, we've got a different deal for you than usual, and it's going to be fun. So, it's the number one sportsbook in America. Well, right now, they're going to give you the number one viewing experience, because here's the deal. Through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Download America's number one sportsbook, and then make a $5 bet. It could be on NBA over-under. It could be on WNBA playoffs. It could be on Caitlin Clark's points totals. It could be on whatever you want. But it gets you the most important thing of all, is NFL Sunday Ticket for 3 weeks from YouTube and YouTube TV. By the way, the Yankees and the Nationals today, and the FanDuel's made up a fun parlay for you. Yankees -2.5, Aaron Judge, home run, Juan Soto, 2 total bases, and Jazz Chisholm gets a hit. $10 wager wins you $72. $100 wager wins you $720. You decide what you want to do on that. Also, my Giants, who are trying to make a last-second push after falling to the Mariners the other day, are a favorite in Milwaukee today. That's all I'm keeping an eye on. And the Mariners, under Dan Wilson, are a favorite over the Tampa Bay. WNBA tonight, Indiana Fever does play. They're a 2.5-point dog at home against the Connecticut Sun. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Have you been watching the WNBA? My goodness, the Minnesota Lynx run the most beautiful offense. I watched Lynx Aces the other day. The game is so good, just so into it. Aces Wings tonight will not probably be as good a game, though the Sky and the Mystics could be. Some good ones tonight. I don't know if that Fever game, I think that every Caitlin Clark game should be national television. I just decided that. I don't think that my memory is that I was looking and that game is not on national television today, but I could be wrong. I don't, well, they are not. The W is not helping me out with their website. Well, that is really a bad website right there. When you go to schedule, and the first thing it gives you is a May 3rd game, and I have to scroll all the way down to go find today's games. That is not user friendly. The Fever game is tomorrow, and it does not. It's on League Pass, so it is not too bad. All right, let's get to it. Mykhailiuk is a player that I used to love, and was a player who actually, at multiple times, I've probably wanted to get on this roster. He's 6'7", and he can just let it fly. And he's kind of, I thought, was going to be a poor man's Kyle Korver. In 2019-20, when he was 22 years old for the Detroit Pistons, he took 5 threes a game at the time, which was kind of a lot, in 22 minutes and hit 40%. And I was completely convinced that this was going to be the next great shooter. And that the key to me was he was 6'7", more athletic than most people thought. And I thought was going to be able to kind of, I don't know, maybe, like be that. The next year, he's in Detroit and he doesn't shoot as well. And he gets traded halfway through the year to Oklahoma City and he only shoots 33%. And the next year, he only shoots 31% in 56 games in Toronto. And then the next year, he bounces between New York and Charlotte for 13 and 19 games. And then the next year, he's in Boston for 41 games. Last year, he won the title. So he's a 36% career three-point shooter. He can really let it fly. Again, here's the first part. Because he was in Boston last year, I'm sure the Jazz and Will Hardy has institutional knowledge on him. So that's the first part. You've again, in a day and age where I think veteran leadership is awfully hard to find, you've gotten someone here who probably is going to play along correctly, kind of understands how this works now, and is fighting for his career. 2, you've got someone who is totally a viable NBA player. Like, he has played a lot. He has played. If guys get hurt, he's there. And he's probably not. He'll come into camp. He'll compete his ass off. He'll try to make the effort. But he's probably not about to beat out Cody Williams for minutes, Bryce Sensabaugh for minutes, if they're available. It's a little tricky. We'll get into rotation and players and where guys fit. And he's also similar to me on Drew Eubanks. If we make a trade, and that trade is Jordan Clarkson, then Mykhailiuk can fit in just fine and be helpful to play some of those minutes if they're needed. If we have an injury, he can play and be probably really good. If we can't score and we need some floor spacing, he can just play. So the way that you look at all of these kind of are similar in they all are good enough to give you the depth if needed. Eubanks, as I said a little differently, they don't steal minutes, but I do think they'll come into practice and bust some guys' butt. Like, the last thing you want in any of these in your practice, in your camp, and your things like that is having Bryce Sensabaugh going up against Cody Williams and neither of them busting each other's ass. Like, you want Mykhailiuk to have a little bit of a, hey, you're stealing my minutes, my time. I'm coming to get you in camp. And then when the season starts, understand how this works. And we'll talk about this more probably tomorrow. Just like our guards and our small forwards get a little, like how you start parsing out 48 minutes at each of these positions, the 96 guard minutes get a little tricky. And then if you take the power forward minutes, I think they become Taylor and Lowry, with Lowry taking some small forward minutes, and then you have to piece together how they all work. And if we've kind of conceded that John and Walker don't play together, though that's probably 48 right there, can Eubanks and John play together? And then we have too many players playing. So it's going to be a tricky job for Will Hardy to get all of these things and have them play together correctly. But what he's got in all three of these guys are players that are viable, that aren't necessarily going to be pissed if they lose minutes to the other guys, to the 7 that matter for us that we need to learn from, who are also the 7 should be better than. Walker Kessler needs to be better than Drew Eubanks. Cody Williams and Bryce Sensabaugh need to be better than Svi. Keonte George and Isaiah Collier need to be better than Patty Mills. If they're not, that's telling. So that's the common thread between the three. We have institutional knowledge on all of them. They're all adults in the room. They're all viable to play if needed due to injury or other things. None of them are so domineering that they're going to steal minutes or take away minutes from the 7 that matter. And I do think that Drew Eubanks has some skills and some things that are better than people realize that may make the life of our guards better, and we find out if they can develop. So that's why the Jazz signed those 3 guys. We'll look at rotations. We'll start looking around the league. We got a month to go. I've lined up all the shows in my head. I'll put them on paper this week, and we'll be ready to roll. I'll be back with you for a Wednesday edition as well. It is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. If you want Jazz, we're talking Jazz each and every day. Thanks so much for taking it all the way to the end of the show with me today. You're the best. To the everydayers out there, appreciate you. Have a great one. There is the new show, The Big 6 and 60 was a lot of fun. If you want to grab that on audio, on video, we're going to send you to the first ever 24/7 national sports channel. It's called Locked On Sports Today. Have a great day. Thanks so much for being a part of Locked On Jazz. It's a pleasure to bring it to you every day, and I'm glad to be back and bring you the show.